Welcome to the RideShare Guy. My name is Chris, and this is a breakdown of Super Pumped Episode 2, labeled X to the X, which we find out later in the episode that this is a party meant for Las Vegas because they took New York City. More on that in just a moment. So the show begins in 2014, racing to Travis's office where there was a problem in Portland, and then it goes to a scene where they are showing Portland Authority giving out tickets and impounding Uber cars and trying to tell them to take it up with Uber. So then Travis says, we'll pay all the fines, make sure the drivers are okay, and then get the cars back on the road. The following scene goes to Gurley's office where Gurley is having a meeting with two other people about Uber and kind of the situation of what's going on there as well as what was going on in Portland. So they're trying to figure out a couple of things, feel out the company, and see where their options lie. Then after that scene, it goes back to Uber HQ where Travis is having a meeting with the other people at Uber trying to figure out what to do in Portland. They bring up Grayball, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And they were saying, oh no, we can't do that because that's illegal. There's fraud and could see some jail time and stuff like that. And that is the same moment when Gurley walks in and says, whatever you're planning, don't do it. So Gurley comes and says, what are we doing about Portland? Trying to figure it out and make sure things aren't going to go into other cities and have issues while Uber is trying to expand and grow. So he's trying to get a feel for it. And then Travis says, look, we got it. Don't worry about it. And then talks about the X to the X party, which again is later in the episode. Gurley brings up the last party that they had in Miami and how it brought really bad press to Uber and says, if you plan a party now, this is not a good time and the press will bury you. So you got to be careful of what you're doing and don't do that. Focus on Portland and how to stop that from happening in other cities. So Gurley leaves and Travis brings up Grayball again, where they say, yeah, let's do it. Then they decided to Grayball the people in Portland who were the ones who were issuing the tickets and the impounds of the cars, trying to level the playing field and say, hey, we're taking back Portland. Drivers don't need to worry because we're going to make sure that the people who are doing this cannot get into an Uber. Then during the time where they're initiating the Grayball, it shows the people in Portland who are issuing the citations and the impounds that they're connected with an Uber, but as the Uber comes, there's no real Uber there. It was a ghost drive. So it was something that was designed to make it look like they had a ride coming when in fact they really didn't. So they were grayballed and they weren't able to actually get an Uber. They couldn't get picked up by one. So then they just kind of ended the day and said they were going home. So it was kind of trying to fight their technology with City of Portland. And well, so far it looks like Uber may have a one-up, at least for right now. After that little bit, then you see Travis walking out of the war room. And yeah, it's actually labeled war room. And then he's going to make a speech in front of everybody saying, hey, look, we're staying in Portland. It doesn't matter what's going on. And we're going to go to New York City. After we take New York City, we are going to have a big party. And again, that's alluding X to the X, which is the name of the party. After that scene, it goes back to Gurley where he is talking with his wife and he again is trying to talk it out to himself and her, try to get a workout when it comes to how he might have to deal with Travis and Uber and see what's going on there. And then right after that, it shows Travis coming to a private airfield where Gurley is standing there and saying, look, I want more transparency. I want to be part of this, but I want to help you grow. I don't want to clip your wings. I want to give you wings. And then Travis being Travis says to Gurley, you know what? I'm not really impressed with the plane that you showed me, but when you show me Zuckerberg's plane or Elon Musk's plane, well, they don't have planes out in the open. They have hangars, so they could do whatever they want, wherever they want, and they're kings, they're gods. And so he's trying to say, like, stand out of my way because I'm going to be doing this. Then there's the next scene that alludes to Travis actually telling Gurley what is going on and some of the things there. but it wasn't shown on the episode, so we're not really sure if he did or not. Then it's Travis out to dinner where he meets another girl, even though he's in a relationship. And this starts the next scene where he is sitting in his couch at the end of the night watching this new girl play violin because she's a violinist. And then he actually opens up another video talking about Jeff Bezos and his 14 core principles or fundamentals of Amazon. And this is the point where Travis then creates the 14 core values of Uber. Then we move on to a meeting between Gurley, Travis, and a few of the other people at Uber, trying to figure out a little bit about Portland, but mostly about how they're going to break into New York City and make that their next target. And then it goes into this really cool little scene where it's like a video game, and it's very much similar to like Mafia meets Grand Theft Auto. And it's a voiceover at this point where they're talking about dynamic pricing and surge pricing, which as a driver, we all love that surge pricing, so it kind of brings that up into it. Then it also says if there is any issues where we're in New York and there's something like a cap put on place on the amount of drivers that can be out on there, well, you're going to see the increased wait times, and we're going to show the riders exactly what that is. And how Uber was going to manipulate both riders and drivers, and then Uber say that they're standing with those people up to the elected officials in New York City to demand that Uber stay as Uber and that they open up and get rid of all restrictions. Now, we know there are plenty of restrictions in New York City in the actuality of it, and there's a lot going on when it comes to New York. Whenever you talk about Uber or Lyft, there is a huge difference between New York City and pretty much everywhere else. Then there's a driver appreciation party in New York City where the drivers are being shown that they're in New York. The show then cuts to Las Vegas, and it's the X to the X party. Then they show Gurley and Travis having a little bit of an exchange, talking about, well, let's make sure that this stays on the DL, that the press doesn't get hold of it, and everybody in the party is actually going to behave. So Gurley's a little leery about it, but Travis is like, hey, we got it covered, don't worry. The following scene shows Travis up on stage talking to everybody at Uber, and this is where he unveils the 14 core principles of Uber and then gives a little bit of speech about some of them on the show. And after that, it's followed up by the following morning. That kind of gives you like this hangover-esque vibe because they're going over a line-by-line item of everything that was spent on the night prior, like cleanup fees, like Grand Theft Auto and vehicular destruction, and it ended up being a $25 million price tag. So as they're going through some of these line-by-line items, they do cutscenes to show some of the party that was going on, kind of like a fill-in-the-blank style thing, like what Hangover had done. And then Gurley walks up, and they have a little bit of talk, and some people are pulling a keg out of the pool, where they're like, what happened here? And then they show a cutscene of throwing a keg out of the window into the pool, and just had this weird, funny exchange when it came down to it. But in any event, Uber did get slammed for having $200,000 in just balloons. So it kind of puts into perspective $25 million for an X to the X party and some of the craziness that they did during their parties. After the X to the X party, the next following scene shows Gurley again talking to his wife and saying, hey, look, there's some revelation of what's going on. There was a problem with somebody that they had dealt with before, and he is trying to prevent that issue from happening again when it comes to Travis, when it comes to Uber. We're not really filled in too much on that, but I'm assuming that we're going to see more of that as the series unfolds. And then the following scene shows Travis with his mom having dinner, and his mom is asking, hey, what happened to your girlfriend? And then Travis says, hey, it was mutual. We broke up and we both were holding each other and crying. And so it showed this little scene in the park where then all of a sudden it was cut out and you saw what really had happened. And he had basically said that he wants more, he wants different, and he didn't want that, but that's what it was. So he wanted to end things with her. And as she's walking out the door, she says, oh, I must be your seed round. And then she walks out, and it goes back to Travis with his mom at the end of the night, and they're walking out. Travis's mom gets in the car, she leaves. Travis starts walking down the street. All of a sudden, the pink mustache rolls up, and he is seeing this and wondering what's going on, why a driver and a rider are actually on the Lyft platform over Uber. So he asks the rider, why did you order this instead of an Uber? She says it's cheaper. And he says, hey, driver, I want to become a driver. How do I become one? The driver then says, hey, we make more. We get tips. Something Uber's never done. After the car pulls away, Travis gets on his phone, and we don't know who he's talking to, but he says, oh, I'm looking at this right now. Driver bonuses, appreciation parties. They're stolen all my ideas. We're going to war. And then right at that point, the camera zooms out, and you just see a line of Lyft pink mustache cars driving right by. It was probably like 10 or so cars. So it was pretty interesting to see that, and it just shows the setup for what is going to come next in next week's episode, and kind of going into the future of this series. So that was a breakdown of episode 2. All in all, again, it was a pretty good show when it came down to the entertainment value of it. And of course, there are some very big inaccuracies when it comes from what actually had happened for Uber versus what's happening in the show. So take that with a grain of salt. Look at it more for an entertainment value, and then you might be appreciative of the show. But my question to you is, are you watching the show? Have you seen it? What are your thoughts on it? Do you like it? Do you think it's kind of lame? What are your thoughts? Comment below and let us know. Now, Uber did just recently update how they pay drivers, and it's called upfront earnings. If you're wondering how upfront earnings work and if you're actually making more or less, well, check out this video right here as it breaks down pretty much everything on Joe's first week driving with upfront earnings. Also, make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet. All right, drive safe, everyone.